Out of a bullet bag?
I can't even answer that. I was about to say
You
something.
sure can't because it's damn Secret Service,
I
FBI.
I can't even say nothing. Joe Biden's checkered history
be at the door.
of race relations exposed in new book. So there was a book written.
He getting his memoir out early, huh?
This ain't his. It was a investigative journalist wrote this. You know, people will write a story about somebody else's life. And it's better because they get to the nicks and crannies.
They don't leave shit out.
They go get people who don't like you and who do like you.
Somebody should have did a memoir on Obama's life.
Oh, they did. You just didn't hear about it because they popped their ass before they had a chance to release it. A new book about President Biden and his family rise to power claims that the residence that he lived in at the beginning of his Senate tenure came with a caveat that barred it from being owned or occupied by any Negro.
Like here in the state of Seattle, in the state of Washington, especially in the Seattle district, I think it's the U district, Roosevelt district. They had it where you cannot sell. Oh, Queen Anne district too. They had it in the deed. When they sell you the house,
you can't have a Negro.
You can never sell it to a Negro.
That's called keeping it in.
That's redlining.
Yeah, it's called keeping it amongst your people. But the Biden's insider family, first family, 50-year rise to power by investigative reporter being Scheringer of Politico is set to hit the bookshelves next week, but Fox News obtained an exclusive chapter of the book. During the first years of Biden's Senate tenure, he moved into a house his parents had vacated in Falkland, Delaware. Over a decade later, it was reported that the house came with a restrictive caveat that said the house couldn't be owned or occupied by any Negro or person of Negro extraction. So even a biracial person?
Octoroom.
Any of them.
You had to be 5 generations in.
So it says Biden pushed back against the restrictive caveat in 1986, saying that his parents, Joseph Sr. and Jean, filed a declaration of disavow disavow saying they find the restriction morally repugnant and they could not be bound by it. According to the Associated Press, Biden also claimed the deed his dad signed did not include the restrictive caveat. All right, bullshit. Well, you know, it is what it is. Biden has a checkered history when it comes to racial relations in the African American community. While campaigning for president in Alabama in 1987, Biden said, "We Delawareans were on the South Side in the Civil War," and reportedly boasted about receiving an award in 1973 from segregationist George Wallace, who was the governor of Alabama at the time. Which is funny because he compared Trump to George Wallace, but he liked George Wallace, so that means he liked Trump. In 2006, Biden touted Delaware as a slave state, an attempt to appeal to Southerners ahead of 2008 presidential campaign, saying, "My state was a slave state. My state is a border state. My state is the 8th largest black population in the country. My state is anything from Northeast liberal state." Now, what did he mean by my state is the 8th largest black population in the country?
Maybe he meant that the most slaves.
Yes, that's what I get from that.
He's saying they had a lot of black slaves there, which means why they have the 8th largest black population.
He made sure to point out we're a slave state, we were a border state, and we are the 8th.
And I had no idea that Delaware was the 8th largest.
That was in 2006.
Okay.
So I don't know about now.
Most Negroes are in the South.
Yeah, during his 2020 campaign, Biden raised eyebrows several times as his Democratic opponent and then President Trump shed light on his history of insensitive comments and longstanding policies that had negatively impacted African Americans.
Trump was right.
Now, keep in mind, this article was written by Fox News. So, you know, what they're saying is true, but they're also painting this in a way that they really don't disagree with Biden. But, you know, look what he said about black people, but you said the same thing. They don't care. So during a May 2020 radio interview with Charlamagne the God, Biden received backlash for suggesting African Americans ain't black if they hadn't decided who to vote for between Trump and Biden. Vice President Harris, who was the Democratic presidential candidate running against Biden in 2019, said it was hurtful that Biden praised the civility of segregationists he worked with in the earlier days of the Senate. Yeah, Biden, we already know who Biden is. Biden he's one of those dudes who has support from the Dixiecrats and all the other stuff. But something else came out.
Just like what's his name? The turtle looking one.
Oh, I forgot how you say his name. The Republican.
Out of Kentucky.
I forgot his name.
Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell.
Just like Obama, I own slaves. That's what Biden gonna say. Just like Obama,
I own
my family owns slaves.
Biden's ancestors own enslaved people, genealogist says. But how do y'all didn't say this? All right, we know why. So when you read through the article, they pretty much say that they tracked down his family and found out on the 1800 census that his great-great-great-grandfather owned 2 enslaved people. A and another great-great-great-grandfather, Thomas Randall, enslaved a 14-year-old boy in Baltimore City. Now, why would a man enslave a little 14-year-old boy? Yeah. We don't really want to get too deep into that.
Buck breaking.
Why would he enslave a 14-year-old little boy?
Pedo, allegedly.
I mean, we see what Biden do. We've done a video on him too, and the crazy shit he doing. Anyway, let's just move on.
Little girls though.
Little boys too, probably. If you look at this, Joe Biden and the Dixiecrats who helped his career.
We talked about that.
We talked about this already.
So yeah.
You see right here, where is it? There's a part of this I wanted to read. Oh, here you go. Eastland never called me senator, Biden told Jones supporters. He called me son. The Scranton, PA native, who would someday serve as the vice president of America's first black president, spent his first term relying on the counsel and mentorship of not only Eastland, but also Mississippi's own powerful segregationist, Dixiecrat, U.S. Senator John C. Stennis. Born in Forest, Mississippi, Eastland was part of a family steeped in myth-making of the so-called lost cause of the Confederacy that falsely recast the South role in the Civil War as one of gallantry and honor, a fight not to defend the institution of human slavery, but to preserve white Southerners' way of life. The family history primed its descendants to accept this mythological rewrite. The Eastlands had moved to the forest only after Union Army General Williams Sherman raised their farm 8 miles into the Hillsboro. Eastland's mother, this is Biden's mentor. Eastland's mother, that's Biden's mentor's mother, Alma Austin Eastland, was weaned on first-hand reports of Yankee brutality and bitter and one-sided, often misguided, even hysterical accounts of Negro rule. During Reconstruction, historian J. Lee Annis wrote in his 2016 book, Big Jim Eastland, the godfather of Mississippi politics. Alma's father, Captain Richmond Austin, has served under Confederate General Robert E. Lee at Gettysburg and then in Coventry under General Nathan Forrest, who became the first Grand Wizard of the KKK after the Civil War ended. Austin passed a whitewashed portrayal of the heritage on to his daughter, who then passed it to her son, the future U.S. Senator Eastland. Biden's mentor is a descendant of a Confederate soldier who worked under Robert E. Lee and a KKK Grand Wizard. That's all. So when I hear about his family owned slaves and his opinions on black, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I'm sure people listen to this ain't surprised either.
He's been very honest with who he is and what he's about. So, I mean, it is what it is. But I do find it funny when I went to the tweet that they put out about Biden's family slave ownership. I ain't never seen as many people in my life, as many white people, admit their family owned slaves. Look at the comment section. So did mine. What's your point? People have ancestors who did all sorts of awful things. I'm willing to pay what I can in reparations on their behalf. Okay. Many black Americans have ancestors who owned slaves. Blacks during the slave trade captured and sold other African slaves. I'm white, you think, but my mom's dad is half black from the South, but my Ancestry.com line through him is just still a mystery. Who's pure? And what is pure? This is irresponsible reporting designed to stir up negative thoughts about others. Knock it off. Many of us want to get back to one America, busy learning about the appreciating others. Stop with your petty reporting. Now,
if this would have been Trump,
liberals.
if this would have been Trump that came out and said
His family owned slaves,
they would have been on his ass like white on rice.
These are your liberals saying this. These are liberals.
These are not your conservatives.
Yeah, this is kind of common for white Americans. This is such clickbait. It's not even funny. Seriously, The Hill, majority of white Americans did. What is the point of this? Huh?
We just supposed to forget about it, I suppose.
Okay, so this is a black woman. Okay, so like most wealthy white Americans, how many of them have become president or even enter the political process to aid black folk? If you're running out of legitimate stories news, just say that.
Wow, Miss Ann. She want to be Miss Ann so bad it's ridiculous.
I'm going to assume that all wealthy white Americans men own slave men.
Ooh. House party. Ooh. I knew your name. They used to call you
Jawbone.
This is what white women do. They never want to own up to their participation in slavery.
Read the book. They were her slaves.
Some of you were far worse than white men.
Yeah. Sadly, so did mine. Thankfully, we evolved. What? They are admitting. So did mine. But his grandson also fought for the Union. It's history. It don't define us.
Yes, it do.
And somehow this is his fault? Wow. Biden himself never owned slaves.
So what's your point?
These are your liberals.
So how's that relevant to the president?
These comments are very telling. But when the topic of reparation comes up, we all of a sudden start hearing, my ancestor didn't own slaves.
Finally, a black man had to come in.
His name is Truth Be One, so Black Truth Be One. So you know he owned. Blacks also owned slaves in early South Carolina. Learn more of the history. So as he said, when people start talking about reparations, these same people will say, my family didn't own slaves. But because Biden's family owned slaves and they want to defend him, they say, well, my family owns slaves as well.
I told you they're fucking crazy. Like they pick and choose what's right and what's wrong.
Well, he didn't move on. He didn't, so move on. Nothing to see here.
And
so what?
So what?
Yeah. White people own slaves in America. Therefore, many white American descendants from slave owners. That's not a secret. What's your point of publishing this? Good. Let's talk reparations.
So good. Let's talk about reparations.
Remember when slave owners got reparations for losing their property and we sitting here like, what? Why the fuck is this even a story to begin with? 160 years ago, who's living rent-free in people's head? Biden's ancestors enslaved black people, enslaved African people. They're going to correct that again. Native more than... They're not going to go for that one. But I just find it funny.
There's exceptions
how
to
many
certain
white people admitted my family owned slaves too.
Good. Because when we need that,
all them tweets
that
get brought
cash
up.
payout,
all that's gonna get
we're
brought
gonna
up.
look up the name.
We're gonna remember the name. That tweet.
We don't want to hear shit about the taxes and all that bullshit. You said your family owned slaves.
You said it on social media. Bullface. My
when
family
it comes
owned
time
slaves.
to pony up the dough, we're gonna need you to pony up that dough.
The first woman did say she's willing to, or he or she said they're willing to pay their part. So the first person knew what they was getting themselves into. But everybody else, I don't think they understand.
She should have forewarned everybody else.
I don't think they understand what they were admitting. They were directly admitting their family owned slaves, which means if reparations is something called for, I don't know.
We with that HR 40 bill, not no time damn soon.